On December 9, 1946, delegates gathered in this massive formal hall to draft the official rulebook for a free and independent Republic of India. At the time of this meeting, India remained a colony. Independence was still over 8 months away, finally arriving on August 15, 1947. Why would a captive nation begin drafting the complex blueprint of a democracy while still living under the authority of a colonial power? The Assembly was a calculated race against the clock to prevent a looming political disaster. This map of the 1940s Indian subcontinent reveals a fractured reality. The territory was heavily divided, setting the stage for a power vacuum. Looking closer, the landscape splinters into over 500 distinct princely states, existing alongside British-controlled provinces. If the British simply packed up and left overnight without a replacement system, total administrative collapse would follow. No authority to command the military, no legal framework to operate courts, and no mechanism for public elections. The romantic ideal of sudden freedom sounds appealing, but liberty without a legal framework means chaos. Those 500 borders could easily become 500 separate, warring nations. Indian leaders realized that drafting the Constitution early was a preemptive crisis management tool. They needed to stitch this deeply fractured territory together before the occupying force vanished. A common historical myth suggests the British Empire simply decided it was time to leave, and that they could have maintained their hold on the subcontinent if they really wanted to. The numbers tell a different story. Between 1939 and 1945, World War II left Britain drowning in debt. Governing a massive overseas empire suddenly became a luxury the state could no longer afford. Simultaneously, decades of relentless mass resistance had made the territory ungovernable. Look at the sheer density of this crowd during the 1942 Quit India movement. When a population protests on this scale, daily colonial administration grinds to a halt. The final fatal blow came in 1946. Indian sailors in the Royal Indian Navy mutinied. When the colonial military forces, the very men holding the weapons, refuse to follow orders, occupying a foreign land becomes impossible. Without financial resources, without public compliance, and without a loyal military, the colonial machinery was irreparably broken. The post-war world was turning sharply against colonialism. In London, the newly elected government under Prime Minister Clement Attlee faced reality. The era of empires was coming to a close. Attlee's government deployed the cabinet mission to India in 1946 to actively prepare for a handover of power. For Indian leaders, this was the official signal that the exit was imminent. Fortunately, they didn't have to start from scratch. Indian political thinkers had been laying the intellectual groundwork for half a century, debating early constitutional ideas as far back as an 1895 draft bill. In 1934, M.N. Roy made a crucial demand. He argued that a Constituent Assembly made up of elected Indians, not British politicians, had to write the nation's destiny. Because they had spent decades conceptualizing this transition, Indian leaders were able to mobilize that Constituent Assembly the moment the empire showed its cracks. On August 15, 1947, euphoric crowds gathered at the Red Fort in Delhi. The British flag came down, and India was a free nation. Amidst the massive celebrations, the new constitution remained unfinished. Drafting a comprehensive set of laws to govern hundreds of millions of diverse people across a vast geography takes years of intense debate, compromise, and revision. To survive this dangerous gap, the government implemented a pragmatic stopgap. As this timeline shows, between August 1947 and January 1950, India used a heavily amended version of an old colonial law, the Government of India Act of 1935, to bridge the void. The Assembly members prioritized immediate stability, utilizing a British framework temporarily to ensure the newly born country survived its first years. The Assembly's multi-year effort finally reached its conclusion on January 26, 1950, when the completed constitution officially went into effect. On this day, India shed its transitional status and established itself as a fully sovereign republic, governed entirely by its own laws. If those early delegates had waited until the last British soldier boarded a ship to begin their work, those 500 princely states and divided provinces would likely have fractured. Sustaining a new nation requires a reinforced institutional architecture. By drafting their laws in the shadow of colonial rule, the Assembly engineered the safety net that caught the world's largest democracy the moment